Hello, this is Steve Jarchow, and I'm on the Pete Turner Show. Thank you
That's
very
right.
much for having me, Pete.
Yeah, my pleasure. The Break It Down show with Stephen and co-author Paul. Paul couldn't get here because he's sick, but Stephen's good enough for us, and we're going to have a great time talking about this. It's a topic that we've had on people in the past talking about technology and the rise of AI and boy, just the rapid ascent and then the fracturing of that market and just explosion in every direction and how fast things are moving and it really is. I mean, you guys use the word the new Roaring Twenties in the book. Everybody should get that. The book here, I'll put the link up on the screen for all of you to get the book. There it is. Um, when you look, we've been around this planet a few times. When you see something like this really, we've seen a lot of big explosive changes in life, but AI appears to be one one of the biggest things of my life. I mean, I've been around 53, almost 54 years. This is a real game changing piece of technology.
It sure is. It's going to be pervasive in all of our lives. We can't avoid it. The genie is definitely out of the bottle. And it has the ability to enhance our lives and to create great wealth and to advance medical solutions, pharmaceutical solutions, logistics, infrastructure. It's going to do a lot of terrific things. However, it's also a great danger to us.
Yeah, that's everything right there. You guys have the books divided into these pillars, and one of them that fascinates me, especially here in California, because we try to do we try to lead the way here in California. Well, one of them is our usage of energy. We're trying to convert over to batteries, and Toyota now is trying to lead the way in terms of hydrogen as an energy source. And we consume more and more of it. Our energy grid is older and older. We're reluctant to lean on nuclear. I just feel like, at least here in California, we're getting more and more confused as to how we are going to do this. And I don't see like anyone saying, here is a comprehensive plan where we're going to use all of these different things. And when you guys look at this in the book, what are the good and the bad things that you guys see in terms of the energy revolutions that's coming?
Well, I think you're quite right in describing the confusion and the lack of a coherent plan. There's hundreds of little plans. Uh,
Hmm.
Climate change is a defining issue of our era. It's going to be superseded, I think, by artificial intelligence. And I think AI is going to help us solve a lot of the climate problems. Uh, there's a variety of simple things that we can do and focus on that will help us. One is to reduce the things that use energy. And AI is going to provide all sorts of devices and techniques, which is going to, frankly, reduce the number of persons in the workforce. It's going to enhance our ability to move around without using fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Uh, it's going to do a lot of important things, including helping us predict and simulate climate change and weather in a way that we've not been able to. There's the old joke about the weatherman not being able to predict the weather. We're actually going to be able to predict the weather and plan for it a lot better using
Mhm.
artificial intelligence. In addition, it's going to allow us to diagnose illnesses, uh, provide a number of great medical solutions, and improve our ability to use language in such a way that I think we'll be able to communicate with each other much better. Um, it's going to create the ability to speak in real time using different languages and understanding one another. It's just a lot of very valuable things that are going to happen. But with respect to climate change, I think that AI is going to help us develop much more rapidly than we otherwise would. And we've done this far too slowly, as you're aware. I mean, we're beyond the point of no return. But fortunately, AI is going to speed everything up, and the ability to solve problems and develop alternative solutions. And one of the approaches that's going to be very significant in the next 10 years is geothermal. You know, the Earth produces enough energy from its core to meet all of our needs, but we have not had the ability to make the calculations, to do the simulations in order to tap that form of energy. And that's just one example of the alternative sources that AI is going to help us find, understand, and extract.
I love, okay, so I love this. This is great. I mean, the AI at its best, right? And we love these things. The human animal is a dick, though, and it loves to confound its own problems. One of the things that we struggle with here in California is that the very same people that want to make all these changes also are the very same people that take itself to court. And so, like, our the best of us on the left will say, hey, we want to do these changes. And then the environmentalists in that group say, but however, we have to protect this land. And then the people above that tier are like, but that land doesn't belong to you. It belongs to these private citizens. But and then all of a sudden we end up in this legal wrestling match where nothing gets done, right? And so maybe we have AI lawyers starting to fight these things, but we end up just with this multi-tiered problem. Like, just like we both know that water is an enormous problem here in California, and we cannot get out of our own way. So we can have all the AI suggested solutions. We could raise the level of dams. We could do desalination in the best possible environmentally safe way possible. But there has to be a trade-off. But if we can't get out of the courts for 10, 20 years for a project, by the time we ever get the project, if we get the project done, the project is obsolete because, we've moved on to new, I don't know, it's such a challenge. How do we, even if we had a solution for 1% of the problem, how do we legally get around ourselves?
Well, it's one argument for the Chinese system, isn't it? Where they're centralized and they can just decide what it is they want to.
Yeah.
Humans and artificial intelligence are, like many things, dual purpose. We do good things and we do bad things. And AI has the ability to solve a lot of our problems and deal with a lot of these issues, but it itself is going to create a ton of litigation, having to do with copyright and use of images and all kinds of issues, right of publicity, right of privacy. And we've already seen social media have such a corrosive effect on our national narrative and dialogue, and has encouraged people to be less human, to be adversarial, to be angry at things. And one of the ways that we can effectively deal with AI and differentiate ourselves is by being more human and looking for opportunities to reach out to one another and be of service. And if you will do that without expecting anything in return, opportunities present themselves all the time, and you're the winner if you will do that. So one of the things that we can encourage is, if you're concerned about climate change, if you're concerned about the rising conflict in the national discussion, if you're concerned about AI, act a little more human. Just look at yourself and try to, and I'm not specifically referring to you or me,
Right.
but just in general, look at yourself and look for opportunities. I mean, particularly as you get older, I'm 72, and as you get older, your friends start to die or they get sick. And you can constantly, if you want, find ways to be encouraging. Sometimes it's just smile. Sometimes it's, but if you can do that, that will be a few steps along the path towards us solving some of these aggravating problems between people. And also, listen to people who disagree with you. And
Oh boy.
don't always seek out people who validate your view of reality, but
Yeah.
rather seek out people who have a different point of view, not with the idea of convincing them, but with the idea of listening to what they have to say, giving them a sounding board, and if asked, tell them what you think, but do so in a way that's constructive. We sort of have lost the ability to have conversations on these important topics
Sure.
without everybody yelling at one another. I mean, the kind of discussion you and I are having isn't that common
Yeah.
anymore, despite the number of podcasts and radio and all that. People just do not tend to talk to each other in a collegial, thoughtful, supportive way.
Yeah.
That's a step on the path towards solving some of these issues and coming together more. And but I want to address your specific question: is how can we get out of our own way in this regard? And I'm not sure I have a solution for you there, other than each of us taking responsibility for our own behavior, our own courtesy to others, and looking for opportunities to have constructive discussions. If each of us will make just the tiniest bit of effort in that regard, we will resolve some of these problems.
It's funny. I did a charity ride across the nation, Save the Brave. I drive a van behind a group of motorcycle riders. We raise money going across from California all the way to, in this case, Georgia to Savannah. And then I turn around and I drive back solo in the van, and I kind of start returning stuff as I come back across the nation. And I know a lot of people, partly because of the show, partly because of the person that I am, partly because I try to do exactly what you're talking about. And I can sit with my friends who are pro-gun. I can sit with my friends who are pro-abortion. I can sit with my friends who are all over the political spectrum, and I can understand their point of view. Even if I don't agree with it, I can understand how they come to these conclusions. And to the point where I'm sitting on a couch and being hosted overnight at Roger Clinton's house, Bill's little brother. And if you tried to put Roger on a political position, I would say over half of the time you'd miss, because you just don't look. He is a Clinton for sure, and you do not talk bad about the Clinton family anywhere in the Clinton family, right? But if you were to ask him about current events and guess where he would be, it would be very hard to be accurate, right? And we were able to have a very fair conversation and challenging to each other, but also from a point of view of love. And if anybody knows the Clintons, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of emotions in that family that are positive, and it's the embodiment of what you're talking about. It doesn't always get to be comfortable, and sometimes you got to go, well, that's hard. That's a hard one, and you don't even agree to disagree. You just go, I don't know what to do with that, and maybe you move on to the next conversation. But it takes a lot of tolerance, and boy, tolerance is easy when you agree with the person, but as soon as it gets hard, man, you end up in an uncomfortable place. And one of the things I sort of pride myself on is having my friends who are left of me think that I'm a Republican, and my friends who are right of me think that I'm a Democrat. I'm kind of proud of that, that they kind of aren't sure, because I'm not sure. Ask me on a given day, on a given position where I am at, and I might be changing my mind, because these things are hard to figure out. But I'm willing to hear you out, and I'm willing to get into the mix on a civic problem, and I'm also willing to act locally. But what I'm not willing to do is point my finger at a group and say they're the problem without going and sitting with them, you know?
Well, you've raised a number of really good issues. People ask me, "Are you a Republican or a Democrat?" And the honest answer is, I don't think I'm much of either, really.
Right.
I've voted for Republicans. I've voted for Democrats. I always make
Same.
sure always make sure I vote. But it kind of depends on, what is going on, the issues that are important to me at that time,
Mm.
and, the people involved. And my read on the people involved as to whether they are worthy of your support. And there have been a couple of elections that particularly local elections, that I haven't voted for because I haven't been, excited about anyone at all. And, Paul Pilzer, who's been my friend for 40 years, he and I did business in Russia in the 1990s and in the US for many years. And he wrote this book originally. He started researching and then wrote it for his children. He has four children. They were asking him as they got older, what's going to happen? What's the future look like? And Paul wanted to respond to a number of those questions. And Paul has been a Republican, and he ran for the Senate as a Republican. He was a member of the Reagan administration and in two different positions, pretty high-ranking positions, and he has supported the Republican Party. Yet, as he began to look at the issues facing us over the next 10 years, he came up with positions that are decidedly un-Republican, even though he continues to be a Republican. For instance, he's a great believer as this transition towards technology with AI occurs, that there's going to be huge dislocation. The number of people working, which currently is about 50% of our population, will fall to about 30%. That was actually predicted by John Maynard Keynes 100 years ago. And in addition, a lot of people are not going to be able to work in the same jobs they do right now. So Paul's a big proponent of universal basic income, where every US citizen, regardless of their wealth or status, receives a couple $1,000s a month to help transition that situation, as well as, there's so many people in this country that live from paycheck to paycheck. It would make a huge difference to a divorced mother of three trying to hold her family together to have a little bit extra each month that can go for food, can go for education, can go for whatever. And if you look at our social welfare systems, they're broken. They tend to compensate people with things rather than cash. And ultimately what people want is cash. And if you will provide that, and Paul points out also, take our prison population. We have the largest prison population in the world, which is a crime in itself. And he says, guy gets out of prison, what's he going to do? He's unemployable. He doesn't have any resources, probably doesn't have many friends at that point. A couple $1,000s a month for that person probably will be the difference between them prevailing or going back in. Paul also takes a very strong position on the national debt. He believes that both the Republican administration and the Democratic administrations did the right thing to subsidize Americans during the pandemic, and that the national debt is not nearly as big a problem as some people think. And his Republican friends and colleagues are rather shocked by this because they are very upset by the national debt, which is 30 trillion. However, our GDP, our gross domestic product, which is how much our country grows wealthier each year, is about the same amount. So we are increasing in wealth each year about the same amount as the national debt. And you don't want it to get out of hand, of course, but right now it's not out of hand compared to the wealth of this country. If we really wanted to pay off the national debt, we could find a way to do that. And so Paul takes these positions as a lifelong Republican, which are hardly traditional Republican positions.
Yeah, well, and not the only person that might surprise people. Charles Murray wrote a book maybe about 20 years ago with a similar kind of thing, talking about a UBI type formula. And he said if you had this system, you could then take a medical program and nest it within that, and you could like give a requirement to buy medical insurance, and within that you could, and there's a lot of programs that you could put together and relieve the burden on the taxpayer by having this UBI, and instead of enslaving people within that poverty system of social welfare, you could possibly get out of it. And it is interesting, right? Like these social programs can belong to either party if we allow it. And yeah, there's a lot of good in those things. And it's funny because California does have a lot of Republicans in it. We think of it as being this deep blue state, but turns out there's also millions and millions and millions of Republicans here. And we lose sight of that as well. And the last, I think, really truly across the aisle popular governor was Governor Schwarzenegger, who I think most people think was a good governor, at least initially, until he kind of ran out of steam for a variety of reasons. And so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The leaving something for your kids and writing a book based upon legacy is an interesting thing. And then also looking forward, it's when you guys look at your work that you and Paul did, what what doesn't make the cut? Like, what are the things where you guys just couldn't hash out what the message would be? Because you could make this thing a 5 volume set. I mean, there's plenty of wisdom in your combined decades of learning and writing, but you can't put it all in there.
Well, the main guiding light of this book was to make it accessible and to
Okay.
make it short enough that someone could read it and not be daunted. It's not a very long book, relatively speaking. I've written a number of other books, which are some as long as 800 pages, dealing with finance and real estate and
Sure.
topics. This is a short book, but it's very readable and very accessible. So our hope was that anybody who was interested in the economy, interested in the geopolitical situations facing us, interested in technology, energy, millennials, these kinds of topics would pick this book up and find it entertaining and find that in simple, straightforward language, it explains a lot of subjects that are in the news, but that people really do not have a definitive handle on. And we try to go deep enough to provide some credibility to our positions, but we tried not to get too serious about anything.
When we look at problems, and I'm just looking at California right now, right? Since
Sure.
Paul is from there. When we look at problems that are big dumb problems, and I want to get into geopolitical too, because I'm curious what you guys think about this. But like, look, I'm going to be critical of it. This big dumb goofy train that we have. Maybe it's possible now, but until very recently, you couldn't take a train from LA to San Diego. Okay, it's landslide driven, right? But you cannot take a train directly from LA to San Francisco. You have to get on to a different mode of transportation. We were going to do high speed rail, and it just seems like that's just obsolete technology now. I mean, I definitely can see a time where on land we already own, we don't have to take anybody else's land. On I-5, we can just blaze a lane for ultra high speed electric cars that just drone up and down the highway, and we can go 200 something miles an hour and not have to go through a multi-stop system. And it seems like a train is just an obsolete money grab to me, and that we didn't even finish. So we have these problems where we see what appear to be money grabs that get more and more expensive, multi-billion-dollar projects. You look to the north, and I'm from the Bay Area, you see BART, and BART barely connects the Bay Area. It doesn't even go to like the northern counties at all, right? It doesn't go to Solano or Marin or any of these things. And you think here we are trying to be the beacon of the United States. We're the fifth biggest economy in the world and all that stuff. We say we are broke. We have all of these massive ports and we can't pay our bills. We have all of this tourism. We can't pay our bills. We have all of the cultural economy and people are desperate to make movies anywhere except for California, right? All of these things and we can't seem to pay our own bills. And so I look at that and I think, are we a model for these things? And I'm being critical just in general of the state, not of a party or any of that kind of thing, but I just see a lot of problems that we're struggling to solve because we seem to not be able to solve any of the big problems.
Well, I live part-time in Dallas and part-time in Los Angeles.
Yeah, great compare and contrast.
And I lived in the Bay Area in San Mateo for 8 years. And I like all three places. You know, people ask me, which do you prefer, Dallas or Los Angeles? And the answer is I like both. They're different enough. And in Dallas has benefited from incredible growth, which is
Yeah,
continuing. It does have excellent highway systems, far better than Los Angeles, much better thought out. There are some problems during rush hour, but things clear out pretty good in Dallas. Dallas also has the largest airport by land area in the United States, second only to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And that the city fathers were really prescient in the 60s when they acquired all of that land midway between Fort Worth and Dallas. And so Dallas, you can fly on American Airlines primarily anywhere you want to go. In most places, nonstop. I can get to Singapore or London, Moscow, any of these places that I might need to go to. I contrast that with Los Angeles, that even though they're reconstructing the airport, or maybe because they're reconstructing the airport, it's a mess.
oh
You
my
can't
God,
get anywhere.
it's horrible. Yeah,
And my shoulders get tense whenever I think about landing in LA, and you're taking pot luck as to whether you're going to be able to get to your home or not, and what the timing will be. And I'm fortunate because I have a driver that picks me up and takes me there, so it isn't the worst thing in the world by any means, but it's still taking an hour, and I don't live that far away from the airport, so it's a bit of a mess. However, the last month in Dallas, it has barely broken 100 degrees. And when I left Dallas on Sunday to come to Los Angeles, where I am right now, it was 106 degrees. And this is unusually warm. And there's a question as to whether Dallas will continue to be as attractive a place given these increases in temperature. Is
yeah,
this an aberration? Is this just an unusually hot summer? And Dallas has had hot summers before. But you look at the fact that the parts of the Atlantic Ocean are currently at more than 100 degrees.
crazy.
And there are sections of the Pacific Ocean similarly. You look at the polar ice caps and lack of polar ice caps, and you really wonder whether a place like Dallas will prevail. The other thing, politically, with respect to Dallas, Texas is a red state, but Dallas is more Democratic than Republican. So Dallas is surrounded by a state which has one point of view and a governor who's very, adamantly conservative.
Yeah,
And then you go to California, and I'm not quite sure who's running the train, to use your reference, in California.
Yeah.
Look at the homeless problem in the
Oh
Bay Area
my God.
and Los Angeles. I mean, both cities are arguably completely broken in that regard.
Yeah.
Now, there is a solution to that, I think, which is many of the homeless need medical care and have either emotional or mental issues or drug problems or alcohol problems, and that's creating a lot of the homelessness. And we may well have a medical care problem rather than a homeless problem. And if we were able to take care of our people and provide adequate medical care, that might go a long way towards relieving some of that pressure. I don't know what this, I can't answer you. I don't know what the
Yeah.
solution is with respect to California. With respect to the train, I've taken the trains from Los Angeles to San Francisco. Actually, it goes to Oakland.
Yeah.
And then you figure out a way to get over to San Francisco.
I purposely picked San Francisco just because it does make a point, but you can get pretty close. Yes.
But it takes you all day to do
yeah.
the way the train
Yeah.
works. Now, if you got a day to spend, what I did, my daughter and her friend would, for 3 years in a row, they would ride in the AIDS life cycle, and what we would do is we would take the train up to San Francisco, we'd ship their bikes up there, they'd ride their bikes over the next week back down to Los Angeles for the life cycle, and I would rent a car and sort of follow along and just make sure they stayed out of trouble. But I enjoyed taking a day and riding the train, but that was only because I had a day off, basically.
Right. Yeah.
But it wasn't a way you would choose to travel if you could do anything else, really. And you're quite right. This has been completely bollocksed, the transportation systems in Los Angeles, San Francisco, the homeless problem. The state's financial condition is perilous in some ways. It's not as bad as people think, but it's not great.
It's not great. Yeah. Yeah. Given the advantages that California has, it does make you wonder, like, are we being serious about the things we have to be serious about? I had a guy on the show a while back, and he talks about, I'm just going to be honest about Gavin Newsom's management of our wild spaces. And he calls it insane. He's like, it's insane how he just ignores the problem. And, who knows why? Who knows why? And I've watched the news where you see these are two lefty PhDs, and one says leave fallen logs. The other it's the same news piece. The other one says remove fallen logs. And so it's hard to understand what to do. But this is part of the problem is we get so much debate about things, and we're desperate to always do the right thing that sometimes I guess maybe just get bound up. I don't know. And it's and the show is not about California and its specific problems, but we are talking about really complex things. And your guys' book is trying to hopefully be, a guide towards, many things, not just California and its goofy problems. I mean, one of your guys' pillars is job market upheaval, and we've touched on that a little bit. But the reality is many and Andrew Yang ran on this. He was the one candidate saying, "Look out, the future is here." Truck drivers, look out. People who file things for a living. Remember back in the adorable days when ladies would have to grab a manila file folder out of a cabinet, a bank a cabinet, like those days, that's gone, right? And so jobs are changing, and job markets, including actors, including singers, including illustrators, all kinds of people who figured no one else can do this but me, that's changed. And so what are your guys' thought on the job markets and how people will make money going forward, especially with the arrival of AI and the ability of Johnny Cash to have a song right now? And Johnny Cash has been dead for 20 years.
Well, with respect to the ability of AI to um, duplicate or create a digital performance or expression of art, um, stars and those with recognizable legacies are going to get paid, real money for their images, and
Right.
that's going to be part of the business model going forward. And you will see them acting in shows or performing after they're gone through a digital image. The journeymen or average actors and actresses are going to, not benefit from that. And there's a danger that their images will be used in other shows and other performances. The guilds, the Screen Actors Guild is very focused on this right now. I own a movie studio, so we deal with these kinds of issues. And the way these contracts are typically written today, a studio has the ability to use an image of an actor in any way it wants to. It's a very broad authority. The contracts historically have not really dealt with deep fakes and artificial intelligence per se, but the language is pretty broad right now. And what the guilds ought to do is get very specific regarding what it is they want in that regard, rather than just waving their hands and saying, oh, AI is awful, we need to do something about it. And specifically, I think what's fair is I think a studio ought to be able to use an image in the project that the actor is being paid for. Beyond that, I think that needs to be verboten. You don't use that image or an AI image of that image in a different show, a different movie, a different series. You use it for that specific purpose. And I think ultimately that'll be the dividing point on that particular issue. However, the guilds are somewhat concerned about AI, but the real issue is how did they get paid on streaming? The concept of residuals was that shows go theatrical, and then after that they go to residual type presentations, including television and DVDs, and actors want to be paid on that because that's in addition to what the main purpose was. Well, now streaming is where shows are going to live primarily. And the question is, how do you calculate how the actors should be compensated?
Right.
It's tricky because the streaming services do not want to provide detailed data. I mean, that's part of their algorithms and their special sauce that permits them to make money. With an asterisk, which is the only streaming service of the big streaming services actually making money right now is Netflix. They've already won this battle. The studios just haven't figured that out quite yet. All the studios are losing a fortune. I saw Paramount's numbers were released just a few days ago, and they were high-fiving themselves because they had picked up subscribers, but they had lost over $400 million for the quarter.
Jeez.
From their streaming services. And this is fairly typical. I mean, Disney has lost a couple billion a year or more, and Disney has the best chance probably to prevail with respect to a standalone streaming service. The studios have managed to, and some of it's not their fault, but a lot of it is, they've managed to gut their perfectly good cable and DVD business and replace it with a streaming business. And one of the concepts that Paul devotes a chapter to in the book is consumer surplus, which means something that is more valuable to the consumer than what that consumer is actually paying. And this is the way you build businesses and keep customers. However, the entertainment business, and this is sometimes referred to as the Spotify syndrome, the entertainment business has managed to create huge consumer surplus, huge value for the consumers who pay a monthly subscription and get almost unlimited content. They have effectively devalued content to the point that they can't figure out a way to properly compensate the creatives, and they can't make money themselves. And this may well be the end of Hollywood as we know it. Certainly, the business that has existed for 100 years is evaporating, and you're going to most likely end up with the major technology companies controlling the entertainment business and owning studios or not. So it's a fascinating development, but the studios have kind of done it to themselves, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. So someone will buy the lot, and Amazon Studios may be the one that does it because they can have a loss leader of a streaming service because everybody's buying their
Well,
toilet paper and everything else.
they've are buying MGM, which
Right.
used to be the legendary studio that everybody wanted to emulate, and it's a shell of its former self. But Amazon's buying it, probably paying too much, but not too much for Amazon.
Right.
They're one of the most valuable companies in the world, and it's interesting because if you go back 30 years ago and you look at what were the most valuable companies,
Yeah.
none of them are on the list today. And all the companies that are the most valuable in the world are information related companies. It includes Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Google and YouTube, Meta, Facebook and Instagram,
Hmm.
Amazon. And of course, the biggest part of Amazon is not what all of us as consumers see. It's AWS, Amazon Web Services. That's what produces most of their profits. NVIDIA is the chip company that's providing the chips for AI.
Yeah.
They've almost tripled in value. And then you have Tesla, which is a little bit of an outlier, but technology-related company. Those are the most
Yeah.
valuable companies today.
Yeah.
None of those,
Do-
many of them didn't exist 20 years ago.
right. Do you think is there still a marketplace for like an Alan Ladd to start the Ladd company and go out and make films and be outside of the big studio thing and take risks and make something that's interesting and then take it to the streamers and run it through the streamer carousel and build up something and then just sell that thing, just exit, turn that into an exit to Amazon, to Netflix or whatever?
I think it's very difficult. I won't say it's impossible,
Yeah.
but the independent film business is not working right now.
Mm. Hmm.
There's really no theatrical market, with some rare victories. I mean, A24 has had a number of successful films, including this last year's Academy Award winner. But I'm not even sure they're making money because it is so expensive to release these movies theatrically. And when people see the theatrical numbers, they don't focus on the fact that in addition to the negative cost of the picture, you had to spend probably an equal amount to promote and market the picture,
Right.
sometimes multiple. And
Yeah.
then when the revenue comes in from the theaters, that revenue is split with the theaters. So a movie may get a gross of 100 million, that results in probably 40, 50 million to the studio. And the studio probably spent 100 million marketing the movie in order to get that 100 million. Very
Yeah.
difficult to make money in the movie business right now. And for independents, one thing we are seeing though is kind of a movement of production offshore, away from the US. I have been astounded by the number of foreign language titles that are on
Mm.
Netflix. foreign series. And a lot of foreign countries have subsidy programs, co-productions, and other arrangements which make it possible to make these shows. And it may be that, like so many other things in our lives, we're outsourcing Hollywood to international locations. Not completely, but
Yeah,
significantly.
man, it's a crazy change in the world, right? Just going back a few minutes and talking about like that journeyman actor, who's someone who, like whenever I have people on the show who are actors, comedians, authors, musicians, you're like, what level? Like, so tell me where you're at. Like, are you someone who's like, oh no, I don't go on auditions. I get called for parts and I go out and I do it, You're like, oh, you're like a real, like a professional, like, where they're at. And it's going to get hard for those folks who are like when you dream of being an actor, you can legitimately, and this, I'm not telling you, but anybody in the audience, you can legitimately work every day you want to work in Hollywood, going procedural to procedural, and you're filling whatever bad guy 7, handsome boyfriend 15 on all of these shows, and work and be in 250 different procedurals, in the course of a couple of years and make a decent living. But it seems like that day has changed, and the residual part of it is different. And actually, that makes me think of, I had Gene Kelly's wife on, and he married a young lady, one for love, but also two for legacy. He's like, my kids don't care about this. You'll care about it. And part of the problem with Gene is here's this Hollywood legend, but he doesn't have that contractual benefit. And so anytime she wants to go make money, she's got to go to the studio who owns most of his image, and they've got to negotiate what's going to happen because neither of them can act independent of the other. And so they're bound together. And now we have this new system where Gene Kelly may be in a movie soon, and it's this crazy world. And, it's, she can create anything she wants to that she performs about her husband. But anything beyond that, like if she wanted to create a commemorative China plate set, which might sell to a certain age set, okay, well, she got to go to the studio and get approval. It's crazy, all of the legal things. And even that is all, it's a crazy landscape. It's just hard to even understand at times.
Well, and she's fortunate because Gene Kelly is a legend.
Right.
So she
Yeah.
has at least something to work with. I really admire actors. It is so difficult to do the work and so difficult to find the work. Approximately 1% to 2% of all actors work at any time. Most of them
Right.
are not working, and virtually none of them make enough money to live. They have to do other jobs, which hurts their ability to audition for all these different possibilities. And the whole workflow in Hollywood has changed, and this segues to the Writers Guild, where they used to do TV shows with 24 episodes or more, and now most of these series have 6 to 10, and the writers' rooms are no longer 20, 30 people. The writers' rooms are 6.
Yeah.
And the studios, and Netflix really started this. It was felt that you had a showrunner, a creative driver of the series, and he or she only needed 3 or 4 writers to support them to write this 6-episode series. You don't need and the problem that the Writers Guild is complaining about is they're not training young writers, they're not giving them an opportunity. And, obviously the employment is less. And again, for both actors and writers, we go back to how do we calculate residuals on streaming? There is a way of doing it, but the streamers are going to strongly resist providing intimate detail as to their algorithms. I was reading an article the other day that said, well, either the studios are making so much money that they don't want the actors to know, or they're making so little money or losing money and they don't want Wall Street to know. So they're they're damned if they do and damned if they don't, and and they're really resisting that. And the other issue that's related to this is the amount of money being made by the studio heads.
Yeah.
If a studio head who says that he or she is disappointed that the actors are striking, yet is making 20 million a year and building a yacht, that's not a very sympathetic posture from which to make those sorts of promulgations.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the market is fractured so much. I know I barely watch TV. I mean, just barely. Compared to what I used to even 10 years ago, I didn't watch much TV, but I watched 100% more. Like I almost just never watch it. So I watch very purposefully what I'm watching. And
What do you like to watch? But when you
well,
do,
right now I'm watching that ILM, Light Magic, that thing written by or directed by Kasdan. It's about George Lucas's, the rise of that whole studio. I
sure.
think that's on Netflix. I think, um, but I'm not bound to any brand. I don't care about that. And if it doesn't grab my attention right away, or if I get a hint of any kind of political anything, I'm out. Because I'm not there for that. I don't care if it's right or left. I don't. I'll leave in an instant. I don't like superhero movies, so I'm pretty hard to please at this point. Look, I've seen all the movies. That's why I don't like superhero movies. Like I've seen all of them. I understand what's. Oh, is all hope lost? Oh no, are they going to roll credits right now? Oh no, they're okay. Something else can. I just can't do it. So I'm pretty hard to please. So obviously I'm not their market, but I don't
Oh,
watch any network
but
TV.
but you are the market, because a lot of people are reacting the same way you are. I mean,
Yeah,
all of these channels, all these streaming services, and nothing to watch, or nothing that
yeah,
you. I find I don't watch broadcast TV. You
never.
know,
Yeah,
like I did, 20 years ago, 30 years
sure.
ago.
Yeah,
I tend to turn on if I am at home, I tend to turn on either golf or baseball, because nothing ever happens, and I can get a lot
yeah,
of. It's like wallpaper.
yeah.
Um,
I do watch baseball. I'll watch the Dodger game or whatever is on, and a lot of times I do work when that's on. And how many? Everybody has someone in their family. I certainly do, and if I pay attention, I do this too. I know the beat before it's coming, or I'll say, "Oh, I remember this episode of Cheers." I'm not watching Cheers. I'm watching Big Bang Theory or whatever it is,
mhm.
because these shows evolve. Look, Menander wrote these shows 2,500 years ago, right? So they are variations on a theme. And I'm being unfair, but do reach a certain age and you've seen a lot of these things. It's not that I don't enjoy
I don't think you're
any of
being
these.
unfair at all. I think you're making an observation that a lot of people feel. We've kind of, you reach a certain age, you've kind of seen, pretty much, what these shows are like. And,
Yeah,
how many, and, I'm not one who enjoys watching grisly violence or anything like that.
sure. Right.
And a lot of TV is that.
Yeah.
And it just, it isn't for me. It isn't, if watching TV, I want something that is kind of relaxing. I've worked all day doing something, and now I don't want to be stressed unduly. I want
Yeah.
to relax. So, any event, I do
Yeah.
I do admire baseball players, the skill of the
Oh
pitchers,
man.
and the ability
Yeah.
to hit at that
Yeah.
level. I mean, it's extraordinary. I
I
marvel at
wouldn't
it.
mind seeing a different baseball channel, same game, like a different kind of channel, like different announcers, and just show me more data. Show me how fast they're running and have them
Mhm.
talking about that part of the game. I would watch that and pay attention to that. Like the announcers, like I like all of those guys and everything, but I don't need that. But yeah, they could definitely give me a different version of that, a different storytelling version of the game. And like right now, like the with that pitch, the percentage of winning has gone up to I would eat that up. I definitely would watch that. And maybe
Well,
there's only 10 guys in LA like that, but I would definitely get into
no,
something
I,
like
I
that.
think there are more, and both um, baseball and football are very, very data-driven sports. I mean,
Sure.
AWS, Amazon Web Services, is a big advertiser on NFL football. And the reason
Right.
for that, in large part, is they're working very closely. I mean, they even have chips implanted in the footballs in order to measure a variety
Yeah.
of things. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're interested in data on sports, there's a huge amount, and I think you're more right than wrong. I think having something that really focused on analyzing that data would be
Yeah.
quite. I would like that too.
I don't know if you remember, but in the 80s, when like the Cardinals were running like wild and Ricky Henderson was running, they would show that picture in picture and they would say, like, oh, Ricky Henderson's got, like, when he's got his foot on the edge of the AstroTurf, that's a 10-foot lead. And you're like, oh boy, And so you could see the game and the tension that he created, or Vince Coleman, or whoever it was. And that just created an excitement of the game. And they just don't do that anymore. They don't draw attention to that. Like he's going, because now that stealing is back,
Yeah.
some of that excitement. Hopefully, they will start to call attention to it because it is measurable now. You really can't put a virtual line on there and say anything beyond this. This is the go zone. This creates this much time, and this much time with this pop time. It makes his chance of making it 98%. They can't let him get to this spot. Or whatever it is, right? And tell that story. I'd eat that up. I'd eat that up easily.
You're right. They're not given the changes to the game, which may have made it a lot more interesting and moved so much faster. And I love the fact that there's so much more stealing, and
Yeah.
they don't do a very good job, as you have correctly pointed out, of parsing that.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see the runners lead, and at what point it's the point of no return.
Right. Right. Like you have a line turn yellow. Oh, he's in the zone where he might get that big lead. Oh, now it's red. It's dangerous. Now he's in the zone of being maybe picked off, and that whole cat and mouse.
Right.
That was great. That was great to see that. I don't want to keep you from too long. And I just love this conversation because we do have these big problems. And let me just say this in general. The world is a really great place here in America. We're not in Ukraine. We're not in Yemen. We're not in Burma. We're not in all these places that have real, actual life and death day-to-day problems. We're very fortunate to live in America, and we can bellyache about the national debt and all this stuff. But truth is it's pretty sweet around here. We get to vote, and for the most part, we believe the person that we voted won. For the most part. But it's great that you wrote this book, and it's great that you guys point out these things. And there are so many great things. Like when low-level job places like grocery stores are like, nobody wants to work anymore. Oh, I beg to differ. They're working. They're just not working for you because they're getting paid and they're driving their car around. They're delivering groceries. They're doing other jobs. And so it's amazing that people can use their time and their own resources to make money, and they don't have to go get a job at REI or some other place. And so I love that you guys are pointing these things out, and there is some great things ahead of us in the future. So those are my final words. What do you want to say?
Well, to amplify what you've just said, the book is a very optimistic book at a time when everybody's complaining about everything and people are angry all the time. And I go back to the fact that, if we want to deal with these problems and we want to distinguish ourselves from machines, be more human in your own life, because ultimately you can't control everybody else's lives. You can only deal with your attitude and your approach to your life. And you're quite right. We should wake up each morning, as long as you're healthy, and incredibly grateful for the lives we have and the fact you're able to do work and you're able to show up and you have friends. What a lucky life, really. So fortunate.
Yeah. All right, stand by 1 second. Let me roll the credits. I'll come right back to you. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to. Curated